Middle East policy enters the Ohio governor's race. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Joe Ingles, State House reporter for Ohio Public Radio. Jim Siegel, State House reporter for the Columbus Dispatch. Bob Clegg, Republican strategist, and Sam Gresham of Common Cause Ohio. Before the campaign for governor began, not many would have listed the Syrian civil war as an issue dividing the candidates. But here we are. At issue is Dennis Kucinich's sympathies for Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. The Democrat met with Assad last year. He has questioned whether Assad used chemical weapons on his own people, and he has been critical of U.S. military involvement in Syria's civil war, calling it a war crime. Now it comes out that a group that supports Assad's government paid Dennis Kucinich $20,000 to give a speech at a gathering in London, England. It gets even messier as the AP first reported Kucinich did not fully disclose who paid for that speech on his Ethics Commission reports. Sam Gresham, how big of a deal is this in this campaign, or is this just a minor gaffe or blemish?
I think because there's not much going on in the primary, it's a bigger issue than it should be. But there's some hypocrisy surrounding that, and I think that's what people are grabbing onto. The $20,000 is not a bad thing either. I mean, that's a nice piece of change for the speech that he gave.
He did have to pay for his flight, apparently, his travel costs. So.
Well, but 20 grand will take care of that. But I didn't see the opposition really take advantage of this. I didn't see them aggressively go after this as an issue in which they drag him through the mud.
Yeah, it wasn't Richard Cordray had a press release pointing us to the article, but it was Ted Strickland who came out and had the conference call and blasted.
He came out and he was talking about how this was wrong and how Assad was such a horrible leader, and you've got Dennis Kucinich embracing him and all of that. But even with that, you're right, Sam. There wasn't the outcry that you would expect from that. I thought when I first read it, I thought, oh boy, here we go. There's going to be a lot, and no, it really wasn't that much.
What's going on is the Democrats are so worried about a split in the party, and we're talking about the split that occurred in 2016 between the Clintons and Bernie Sanders. Yep. And obviously Kucinich is of that Bernie Sanders type wing. He may even go a little further than Bernie, I'm not sure, but I think that's why Cordray was so careful. I think that's why even Governor Strickland didn't slam as hard. They're worried that this primary will get somehow so divisive that they can't come together in the fall, and I think that's what's governing how they treat Kucinich. But let's face facts. This is Dennis Kucinich. Right. When you have him running statewide, you're going to get stuff like this because he's like that. And what amazes me is that even after all this came out, the Cleveland Plain Dealer still goes ahead and endorses him.
They endorsed him before, I think, the speech part came out, but they knew he had.
Yeah, they knew he did it because they talk about it in their editorial, so it didn't seem to bother them at all.
Right.
Jim, your paper, the Dispatch, went through all the things that this group has. This group that paid Dennis Kucinich, they believe that 9/11 was a hoax, there was a controlled demolition, it wasn't a terrorist attack. I mean, that's a pretty far out thing that this group supports, but yet they paid his bill.
I also wonder how much more we'd be hearing about this from the other candidates if they simply had the money to spend to put up TV ads like the Republicans clearly have shown that they have in their primary. But yeah, this is. I also don't know how it's kind of hard to I think for some people to wrap your head around how Syria fits into a governor's race. I mean, you hear about this, through Donald Trump and obviously through through Washington, but I mean, it is harder to get voters engaged on a governor's level with this kind of a policy. But look, I mean, just today I saw there's actually a video of Alex Jones from InfoWars who is sitting there, praising Kucinich while Kucinich is on a screen next to him talking to Sean Hannity about how the deep state is trying to bring down Donald Trump. I mean, it's like
bizarre.
This is a Democrat running for governor in Ohio, and it's just surreal.
But yet Sam, Richard Cordray does not have a negative ad out there.
No, he does not.
With that image on the ad,
Right.
which would turn off a lot of Democratic primary voters to see Dennis Kucinich next to Sean Hannity.
Yeah, but he's not playing it, and I don't know why he's playing. Bob raises a good point, and Bob and I don't have many points where we agree on, but I agree on him this. I think this is a presidential hangover. There's the remnants of the Bernie versus the Clinton thing, and I think his observation is correct. We're afraid of that. Democrats are afraid of it, but they're going to have to get over that. And the idea of worrying about that as an issue, and I know it really surprises them, I think Cordray has to put him away, and he has to put him away soon. The polls indicates that he's leading, but he has to put him away in people's minds, and he has to put him away in the newspaper. The PD really didn't help Cordray.
Yeah, the Plain Dealer endorsed Dennis Kucinich for governor in the Democratic race. Joe, that's a bit of a surprise. Now, Dennis Kucinich represents Cleveland. He's the hometown guy, but you know, honestly, he's a long shot candidate in the general election because of his track record. Why did the PD endorse him?
Well, the PD endorsed him because at the time he was the mayor, a lot of things were happening that some of them he's actually looking better in hindsight, okay? But there's another issue here that when you look at Dennis Kucinich, he is very fiery. He's very passionate. He is a soundbite waiting to happen. He knows how to talk to people. He is good at relating to people. If you have a conversation with him, I guarantee he's going to be interesting. He always is every time you talk to him. But you look at Rich Cordray, and Rich Cordray is very measured. He's kind of quiet. He's very smart, also very personable. I mean, he's kind and that sort of thing. I'm not saying that. But he doesn't have that passion that we see in Dennis Kucinich. And I think that makes a huge difference when we're talking about this race in the primary.
Jim, the Plain Dealer said that they endorse Kucinich because he's the only guy they say could shake up the State House, to get it out of its 3-decade long malaise.
Right. I mean, I found it interesting that they said that, you know, business as usual in Columbus has left too many people behind, and Kucinich would be anything but business as usual. Now, what does that sound like to everyone? That sounds exactly like the kind of things folks were saying about Donald Trump, and which is perhaps why the two of them have, in some weird way, formed a kinship. But, you know, and look, and as Joe was just talking about, the same editorial basically said, look, if Rich Cordray is passionate about leading Ohio, he certainly didn't show us that when he met with us. And that's just the way Rich Cordray is. Yeah. He is just as likely to lull you to sleep as anything else during an interview. But I mean, it's all about what you're looking for in your next candidate.
Plain Dealer editorials, how much do they mean in a primary? I mean, primary voters probably read editorials, I guess.
Somewhat. I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about newspapers, but they have lost a little more influence over the years. I think this is, once again, just an insurgency type candidate, Kucinich, against an establishment candidate, Cordray, and I think the paper sees that, and the paper doesn't want the establishment, the same old, same old. You know, it's tough to beat the establishment candidate, as Bernie Sanders found out.
Well, but there may be a silver lining in this. We all know, and like Rich, but he is measured. And maybe that PD endorsement may help him find another way to grow that brand a little different. Because I think, to the degree to be successful as a Democrat in this legislature, you're gonna have to be a little firebrand.
Well, you're going to have to appeal to that activist crowd.
Right.
And I think the concern from some Democrats is that Cordray just doesn't have it in him to get those people fired up and come out to vote. Now, maybe they don't have to. Maybe those people just will do it because of their hate for Trump or whatever. So, but I think that's the big fear here.
But he's not bad in an individual conversation now. Come on. You can get some good things out of him, and constructive things that make sense.
It's tough to meet, though, 2.5 million voters one-on-one in an election.
Yeah. All right, on the Republican side, after a brief reprieve, the name-calling has resumed in the GOP race for governor. Mike DeWine is out with two new ads. One calls Mary Taylor two-faced, the other calls her phony.
Phony, not real. Fake, not truthful. Take career politician Mary Taylor. She claims she's conservative, but Taylor refused to endorse Donald Trump for president over Hillary Clinton. She supported Barack Obama's Medicaid expansion under Obamacare, then lied about it. And she used your tax dollars to benefit her family business. Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor, a phony conservative you just can't trust.
The ads come as Texas Senator Ted Cruz endorsed Mary Taylor, and her campaign says internal polling has her only 10 points behind DeWine. The latest public poll had her trailing by 30 points. Bob Clegg, now Mike DeWine shifted. He went positive a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Now he's gone back negative again.
Well,
Why is that?
I mean, he got hit by her, super PAC, on him. So I think that's probably, this is in reaction to him being hit. He's going to hit her. And there probably has been some tightening of the numbers. I don't know. But I mean, I get that sense just from these kind of ads that are going up. But once again, I think you have, that insurgency versus establishment type thing going on. And Mary has tried to position herself as that, insurgent and trying to portray Mike DeWine as the establishment. And we have Trump voters that are fired up. So, she's trying to take advantage of that.
But sorry, Mary Taylor says that Mike DeWine supports Medicaid expansion. Mike DeWine says that Mary Taylor supports Medicaid expansion. It's hard to tell.
Well, you can be sure the current governor does. That's not a problem. As you watch this dance, it's interesting. I think there may be some hangover from this primary going into the general. If they continue to slug it out like this, I could see where Cordray could make hay out of that, and we may get a lively campaign as a result of that. He could take some of this material that they're using and use it in his general
Sam,
campaign.
I just do not see a Mike DeWine, Richard Cordray general election campaign as being all that lively.
Okay.
But I may be wrong.
Kucinich, Mary Taylor would be much better for
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd
From
get
the
popcorn
standpoint
on
of your
that
job.
one.
Yeah, for me and Joe, that would be
Better quotes and better tape. Jim, does he risk? We talked earlier about Richard Cordray not wanting to annoy the Dennis Kucinich voters. Mike DeWine does not seem to be too worried about annoying the Mary Taylor voter.
No, not at all. And it is a unique dynamic there where perhaps Mike DeWine might be the only person that Mary Taylor could run against and claim some kind of insurgency and call him the career politician when she's been in office for since the early 2000s. But yeah, I mean the first round when he hit back at her. I was willing to believe that there was probably just some, look, she hit me, so I'm hitting her back, and she's also said some nasty things about the party, and it's time to, show her she can't do that. But you hit her back again like this. Now I'm getting to wonder if there is some tightening of the polls. But look, she's got some baggage that she can get hit on, and they're taking full advantage of it. Now there's definitely some playing with the truth in some of these ads, particularly one that attacked went after her husband getting $100 million. That just didn't happen. But there's some things out there for her, and particularly in the way her staff acted when she was a lieutenant governor and still is.
Jim is right about one thing. My history and experience tells me if I'm 30 points up in the polls and she comes after me, I still stay at the high ground. I don't go down to the low ground. There's something in the polls that's making him respond this way because he doesn't have to respond this way.
Will Trump, if after this is all done, and let's say Mike DeWine wins the primary, will Mary Taylor voters hold a grudge and not vote for him in the primary because he's called her a slacker and a phony and two-faced and everything, unfit?
Well, it depends. I mean, number one, it depends on what Mary Taylor does after the primary, if she loses. And number two, it depends what Donald Trump says in the fall. And I think if she is gracious after the primary and says, it's been hard fought, but he won, and I'm going to support him. And, then the president comes in the fall and says, we got to elect Mike DeWine governor because Ohio is too important of a state in 2020 to have a Democratic governor. I think that's going to be more than enough to bring Trump voters over to Mike DeWine.
We've already seen that. You think about last year, when the last presidential election was happening, that was a hard-fought campaign between all of those Republicans that were running on the ticket. And their people who were behind them they pledged their allegiance to them. A lot of nasty things were said. And then when it was all over and Trump was their candidate, even the people who had been the most hurt by some of those things, they came right around and they got in the fold. And so there's not, that's typically the way that Republicans act.
I just wonder how many people or voters are really attached to one or the other. If they may have a preference, but maybe the preference comes down to, I do think someone is more anti-establishment than the other, or not. But I have a hard time believing that. Gosh, I was so for Mary Taylor or Mike DeWine, and the other one won, that I'm not going to vote for them, even though I'm a Republican.
I just had a Twilight Zone feeling sitting here. Trump won, and we didn't anticipate he was going to win. We were all wrong, and we have to admit it. Boy, it would be something if Kucinich and Mary Taylor won. We're talking about a governor's race.
I know one person who has predicted that exact thing happening.
You're kidding me.
I'm not going to say who it is. He also predicted that Barack Obama would face John McCain in the presidential election in 2000. And when Dwayne had pulled up his tent, so it happens. You never know.
Yeah.
All right, on topic 3, with the shadow of an FBI inquiry looming over the State House, a bill to cap interest rates charged by payday lenders is moving forward in the legislature. A House committee approved the bill this week. The bill tries to close loopholes that have allowed lenders to get around a 2008 law that capped interest rates at 28%. This comes days after the resignation of House Speaker Cliff Rosenberger, who left after the FBI started asking questions about his foreign travel with lobbyists from the payday lending industry. Jim Siegel, what's the backstory on this bill? It was delayed right after the resignation, and it came forward this week and passed fairly quickly through committee, it seems to me.
Well, it was introduced 13 months ago. Okay. I mean, and then it just sat there. And then there was a period of a number of months where there were a fair amount of closed-door negotiations going on with the industry. There's a coalition pushing for a ballot issue, which is another big factor in this right now. That would do something very similar to what this bill does, and some members don't want to see that. But then, so in the last few weeks, Representative Kirk Scheuring, who's currently the interim speaker now with Rosenberger out, he laid out a first set of proposals. The payday lending critics panned it, said it was terrible, including the bill sponsor, Kyle Kaler from Springfield. And then he rolled out a second batch of proposals. And Kyle Kaler and others said, okay, these aren't great, but they're pretty good, and we're going to go along with these for now and see how they go. And then came this week, and all of a sudden those got scrapped too, and we just said, forget it. We're just going to pass the bill as you introduced it 13 months ago. And that was very strange. You do not see this kind of activity on a bill, these kind of introduction of amendments, and then all of a sudden we just say, forget it, let's just do what we were going to do, what you wanted to do at the beginning. And there's a lot of concern, I think, about not only the residual effects of this FBI investigation, but just also, are folks getting fed up that there may be an unwillingness with the payday lending industry to negotiate in good faith?
So we want to get it off the plate. They want to get this off the plate and move on to something else.
They want to send it to the Senate and let them deal with it. That's exactly what they want to do.
The thing that has amazed me about this piece of legislation is that the stench has not been attached to any representative. A majority of people are against this bill. I mean, working stiffs out there understand what it's doing, but the stench didn't get on any representatives who are supporting the payday lending industry. I've just been surprised at that.
Not yet, anyway. I mean, the House Speaker did leave, reportedly because of his connections to the lobbyist in this trip. Questions about it, anyway.
Right.
So.
And I wonder, too, if coming back and taking the more stringent version of the bill, if that's not a signal that they want to send a strong message that they're not in the pocket of payday lenders. Like, that's what's going to be said when the investigation is going on. They're going to be saying, well, that lawmaker and that lawmaker, well, the payday lenders have paid them off and they're in good shape. This is a strong message in action saying, hey, we passed something very strong.
Are lawmakers who didn't go for tougher rules on payday lenders vulnerable in the election?
I don't know. We've dealt with this before, and I've never seen where a legislator has been criticized either because they were for making changes or against making changes. I think the interesting thing here is what kind of timeline are we going to be on with this bill? I mean, it still has to go to the full House for approval, and then it's got to go to the Senate for committee work, and then a full Senate vote. And I just don't know if we have enough time in this session that will allow that to happen.
Bottom line, Jim, does this bill, if it were to pass in its current form, would it do the same thing as what the folks behind the ballot issue want and truly cap interest rates at 28%, close all the loopholes.
The experts who are working with the ballot issue say yes, that this is exactly what they're looking for. They think it's a model that the payday lending industry can continue to exist in Ohio, maybe not with as many stores as they currently have, but if you pare down the number and so they can increase their customer base, they believe it will allow people to still get short-term emergency loans, but not have them have to pay them back in 2 weeks, not get them stuck in this debt cycle that has been the big criticism.
The payday lending people should take a page out of our book with regards to the congressional redistricting. The leveraging for us was the 200,000 petitions that we had. I think they should pursue getting their petitions together and use that as a leverage to get the best deal that they can.
And they say they are. They say they're continuing on their signature collection just in case it doesn't pass. So, our last topic, the topic of gun control and gun rights, remains a big one at the State House. Gun owners plan to rally at the State House this weekend. They are worried lawmakers will tighten gun laws in the wake of the Parkland, Florida school massacre. All the while, a bill in the House would prevent local communities from enacting tighter gun restrictions than state and federal law. Supporters say such a law would eliminate confusion for gun owners. Opponents say once again, the law would violate Ohio's home rule provision, which gives local governments the ability to make their own rules. Joe Ingles, I thought we already said that local communities cannot pass their own gun laws, and that went to the Supreme Court after Cleveland's case. What's different about this bill?
Well, the court did rule basically that they can't have these big gun laws, these big far-reaching ones. But what's happened is that the cities have found some wiggle room there, and they've been able to come in with some smaller regulations that, quite frankly, the gun owners, gun groups don't like. And so this bill, the Stand Your Ground bill, has a part of it that would set in place, regulations that would say, okay, we're going to close those loopholes and you're not going to be able to do that. But then there's also another part of it that would say, now, if you're a person who lives in this city and this city has passed some sort of regulation that we couldn't get rid of or couldn't manipulate, and you are actually injured as a result of that law being on the books, then you can go after that city and you can sue and you can get damages, and the city would have to pay the damages. So it's it's definitely trying to close that loophole that's there right now.
So which will pass first? The one that closes the loophole that says cities can't pass their own gun laws, or the one that says we need a red flag law and you can't have bump stocks?
Closing out cities' abilities to do this, because that's what the majority of people in the General Assembly, both in the House and the Senate, support, because they're in the pockets of the NRA. And they're going to pass that type of, I know it's a sweeping generalization, but I'll make it at this point. It's a sad thing to see that they take the power of home rule away from a community over such an important issue. Local communities should be able to make rules like this that their citizens support.
If you're a gun owner, and let's just use it, you have a bump stock and you're driving from Hilliard into Columbus and you travel through the townships, shouldn't you have one rule for all of those states, all of those communities? The bump stocks are legal or not legal. That's what the state is saying. One law for all the states, for all the communities.
Yeah, but I also think home rule has some logic. They should be able to do things different from each other. Now, you may have a point of argument, but there are communities that I go into who have a looser traffic zone versus a slower traffic zone, and everybody knows you can't go through this town at 55,
Yeah. Bob, the speed limits changed from Upper Arlington to Columbus.
I mean, there are some issues that local government should have control over, and there's others. It's like the federal government, and being in charge of national defense instead of all 50 states having to do it. I mean, there are some issues that are bigger than traffic laws, and they have to have common laws throughout, because you do have issues with people with guns who are moving from place to place within the state of Ohio, and they can't always be aware of what that local law is about the kind of gun that they have on them, because we do have concealed carry. If we didn't have concealed carry, it wouldn't be that large of an issue. But since we do, you can't manage this with all these different local.
I don't care. I don't think nobody should be able to carry a gun across any city line.
But the law of Ohio says they can, so they are.
That's a sad point.
All right, well, we'll let the lawmakers figure it out. Right? Time for our off-the-record final parting shots. Sam Gresham, you're up first.
I think the idea of the payday lenders in the end will expose a lot of representatives, and I don't think it's going to be positive for them. The further this thing is being pushed, something's going to grab onto somebody. The stench is going to stick.
Bob.
One of the big races on the ballot this May is going to be who's going to take over for Representative Pat Tiberi in the 12th Congressional District. Former Congressman Tiberi endorsed just today Troy Balderson, and he not only endorsed him for taking over his seat, but he also spent a six-figure TV buy out of his own campaign funds, which is the ultimate putting your money where your mouth is.
And you're working for Troy Balderson, right?
How'd you guess that?
I know. And you buy the TV ads.
Full disclosure now.
All right, Jim Siegel.
There'll be a lot of bills to be voted on in May in the legislature, but perhaps the most interesting vote will be when the House Republican caucus gets together and decides who they're going to vote for to replace Cliff Rosenberger as Speaker. The options now, there's a few folks who have expressed interest, but the options now basically come down to, do you want a Speaker who's only expected to serve until the end of this year? Do you want a Speaker who has expressed a strong interest in continuing beyond this year? And there is a definite divide in the caucus as to where that is, although Representative Ryan Smith says he's confident he's got the votes.
And Joe.
Well, the medical marijuana program is supposed to be fully operational September 7th, but we're seeing court suits right now. We're also seeing legislation aimed at solving some of the problems, but that legislation doesn't look like it's a good shot of passage, so who knows where that's going to end up.
All right. Just briefly, Jackets win Game 6. Whether they win the series or not, but they win Game 6. That's my prediction. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, Facebook, Twitter, and our website, WOSU.org. For our crew, for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.